Okay, well, welcome everybody to another Tuesday training. Hopefully, this is going to be an exciting session. We're gonna do some real time exercises, a lot of writing, um, and well, we're gonna get into primarily what's your story. When I talk about your story, I'm not talking about primarily, um, as far as from a selling perspective or anything like that. I'm talking about more the story of your life, but more what's the meaning behind it? What's the story that you're telling yourself? We've all heard the expression change your story, change your life. Well, I'm a big believer in that expression. As a matter of fact, so much so that it's like I spend a huge portion always of my time always reviewing my story, the self-talk, the things that I'm telling myself from the past. So we're going to do some exercises today to try to identify what's your story, and we're going to start off in such a way. We're going to listen to a TED talk. It's a very interesting TED talk I found. Anyway, it's about 8.5 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer. That's why I'm kind of jumping into things today. But then what I want to do is I want to get into some exercises. I want to start trying to identify some of the things that might be from your past or that are affecting your present, all based on the story that you're telling yourself. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to kick this off. We're going to listen to this. Any problems or anything with the volume, somebody just unmute and let me know. I'd appreciate it. But we should be okay. All right.
Suppose you'd like to get started changing your life. Maybe improve your relationships at work or at home. Maybe clear some doubt or insecurity. Where would you begin? Well, as a psychiatrist practicing for over 20 years, I can offer you a powerful and practical toolkit along with one very specific suggestion. Start with your autobiographical narrative. It's the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and how everything always plays out. It's your personal documentary film. And if you want to change your life, it needs a re-edit. You see, the problem with the film playing in our head is that it's already edited. Some emotionally difficult scenes are way over-included. Just think of all the things you can't let go of. And other scenes are deleted, such as times when maybe things did go well. This personal documentary becomes our inner truth, yet it's a distortion from childhood. When you view it from an adult perspective, you can see that it's not fair or just to ourselves, and it's responsible for the lion's share of our ongoing suffering, causing us to settle for a life far beneath our highest potential. In my clinical experience, there's actually one central false truth that settles in our minds. And it happens at a time before we know the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy reaction to something that really scares us. So we hold on to the wrong conclusion, but we do so for two very understandable reasons. The first is our fundamental need to feel in control. When I was under 4, my parents split up. Since I never heard them fighting, I naturally convinced myself that it must be all my fault. Because it's tempting to self-soothe by taking on blame and responsibility, rather than try to struggle with the fact that life can be unpredictable and out of our control, especially as a kid. And the second reason is that we tend to generalize broadly from very specific circumstances. So the kid whose parents don't seem to notice small achievements may convince himself that maybe no one's ever going to care about anything. Or in my case, the false truth that I held to so dearly was that just as much as I couldn't be effective in keeping my parents together, I probably couldn't be effective at much of anything else. And this left me feeling very insecure. So can you see the worst part about the false truth the most costly part of all? It's that it becomes our self-fulfilling prophecy, the basis of what we expect from ourselves in the future. So we need to look at this like the author Marilyn Robinson calls it, as a mean little myth, something we need to get rid of. We need to know our autobiographical narrative, and then if we want to prevent it from determining our future, we desperately need to do a re-edit. But how? Well, as they say, what's the best way to get out of a hole? It's to quit digging. So we need to do these three things. We need to be compassionate with ourselves about how this all came into being. We need to detach from the false truth, and we need to install a new narrative built from a position of adult strength and vision. By shifting your emotional center of gravity, you can change your story and transform your life. Now, before I give you some of my tools of the trade to use, let me tell you how this worked out for me. I was an insecure little kid. My dad wasn't around much. So my mom had this idea to send me to a rigorous all-boys school so I could get a first-hand sense of what I needed for myself as a young man. It was rough. I was anxious. I had a stutter. But there, as intimidating as it was for me, I began to experience validation from my teachers and coaches. They saw something in me. And eventually, I started to see something different in myself. And as my expectations for myself shifted, I was able to prove myself wrong. If I hadn't cut away from my mean little myth then, I'm confident now that I wouldn't be here with you today. In my 20 years of clinical practice, I've seen this kind of transformation over and over again. Just the other day, in my office, I was talking to a young woman who shied away from all adversity because she suffered from the false truth that when she fell, she couldn't pick herself up. Now she knows that she can, and her future looks entirely different and better. And you know what's really fantastic is that you don't necessarily need to come see somebody like me to shift your own emotional center of gravity. You can change your story and transform your life with a straightforward approach combining three therapeutic tools that work best when used all together, like a fork, a spoon, and a knife. So here goes. Number one, you start with your narrative. This is your fork. Tell yourself your story, out loud even. Try to identify the central emotional reference point, that false truth. What have you been feeding yourself? Now try to look at it again from your adult perspective. Can you see where to start your re-edit? This is something called narrative therapy, and you go on and on with it. Number two, use your spoon. What if you looked at your narrative in a warmer light of greater possibility? What if you spooned more of your strengths into the story? Try to appreciate more that's positive about yourself. You could try right now, such as maybe you made somebody feel good today. This is something called positive psychology, and it's been proven to help remove blocks to empowerment and foster more self-esteem. And number three, use your knife. Employ a powerful re-emerging technique called control mastery. I know many of you might not have heard about this yet, but it has an edge. The essential idea is that already there are more creditable things for you to notice that you haven't taken into account. So use your knife to cut through your false truth. Cut away that no longer serves you so that you can identify and gather up all these many exceptions to your long-standing rule. And then accept that it's safe now to move on. You no longer have to hold on to that false security of that mean little myth. So while I know there are many stories and many possible revisions for all of us, I truly believe that there's one underlying story that you deserve to identify and rework first, above all else. Notice the distorted truths you've been feeding yourself. Pour in a more compassionate adult view. Cut away beliefs and ties that undermine you. Use your fork, knife, and spoon together to build your new narrative with vision, and let this become your new self-fulfilling prophecy. If along the way you should fall prey to negative self-talk, remember to be compassionate, detach from that, and continue on your journey. Because with these tools and these insights applied, you can not only re-edit your story, but you can also rewrite what will soon become the history of your future. Thank you.
Okay, so I thought that was extremely interesting. To the point where I've actually watched it several times. But we all have a story, guys. Each and every one of us has a story to tell. And it's the story that we keep within us, that we keep telling ourselves. And I like the way he phrased it as far as re-editing your story, because so often that story really isn't factual. It's all based on, well, your perception of when you're younger, about your experiences, of what you were going through emotionally at that particular stage in your life. But we tend to hold on to that for years and years to come. And it's a good thing to remember when you're working with clients, they're doing that as well. And a lot of the false beliefs that they have come from those stories that they're telling themselves, come from their younger days, their childhood even, where they were going through some challenge at the time, or some emotional state, or the environment that they were in that really affects them to this day. For example, I myself, I know you guys know a good bit of my story. You know about, well, back when I was 10, 12 years ago, when I was working, I had my challenges with my heart, and it kind of led me down this path of personal development. But my younger, back to the very beginning, I won't bore you telling you too much, but I can tell you I didn't come from the best environment. I came from one of the more economically depressed areas of the south side of Chicago, and that's a nice way of putting it. And there's a lot of issues. My parents were divorced. Uh, my mother died at a very young age, when I was very young, 11 years old. I went to go live with my father. A lot of issues there. Good people, don't get me wrong, and I'm not crying, about any of it at this stage in my life. But a lot of the things from my childhood affected me for years to come, to the point where I harbored beliefs like, I'm not good enough, or primarily that when there's promotions coming up and whatnot at work, I didn't think that I had the ability to do certain things. And truth be told, it was all nonsense. But I identified it, thankfully. And I'm pretty confident that you all have a story, probably not like mine, but I'm pretty confident you all have a story. You might have came from the nicest home in on the planet, but I guarantee you there were some challenges there. I guarantee you there were some things that happened along the way where you picked up some, well, some limiting beliefs at best. But that's what we want to look at today. We want to take a look at some of the limiting beliefs that possibly you picked up along the way. And we're going to start challenging some of those limiting beliefs. So every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Not necessarily always in that order. But when it comes to the story of your life, well, what I want to do is I think we need to focus more on the past, the present, and the future. So primarily what I would like to do, if you guys are up for it, is we're going to do some real-time exercises. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to take a look where it all began. But where did it all begin specifically for you? And we're going to go back to those early days, those early days when you were either, a young adult or even going back to your teenage or adolescence. But primarily what we want to do is we want to look at some of those limiting beliefs that possibly you picked up along the way that are still to this day affecting you. And what we want to do is we're going to make a list. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to take pen to paper and we're going to time it. And I'm going to ask you to write some things down. And primarily what I want you to do is, well, I want you to take a look at some of the things that you think are holding you back. Try to identify some of the things from the beginning, from your early days, that you think right now are holding you back. And I want you to write down that list. Put them down in any format you want. It doesn't really matter. But write down as many as you can. But we're going to go ahead and primarily, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Now, as we go through the 5 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to direct you along the way. I'm going to say a few things to kind of maybe help you to, maybe think of some things, free up some memories, just give you something to think about, so to speak. But primarily, write them down, and then we're gonna move on to the next stage. But what I'm going to do is, give me 1 second. I'm just going to hit my stopwatch here. So if you can start writing now, I'm going to get, I hit the clock. We're going to give you 5 minutes. But try to come up with some things that you think, again, whatever you think you want to add to your list. It could be anything to do with, the environment that you were growing up in that maybe you think might have affected you, that pushed you in a different direction. Maybe there's some things from your youth as far as maybe from your parents, the household you were being brought up in, the school that you went to. But we all have them, guys. You have positive beliefs too that really empower you, that help to shape you. But what I want you to do now is to focus on those negatives, those limiting beliefs. Maybe you develop, a way of thinking that, well, you're just not good enough for whatever reason. Maybe something happened along the way to kind of push you in that direction. Maybe somebody bullied you. Maybe somebody said some rude things to you over and over and over again. Maybe you said them to yourself. Maybe you felt like you just weren't smart enough for whatever reason. Maybe you didn't excel in school. Maybe somebody told you. Maybe you had, you grew up in an environment where you had older brothers or sisters or classmates or your friends or whatever the case, your parents maybe even, that you just kind of picked up along the way that, you're just really not that smart for whatever reason. maybe it had nothing to do with what anybody said to you. Maybe it was something internally you just felt. Like you felt you didn't come from the best of environments, like you were from the wrong side of the tracks. Maybe you were from the wrong side of the tracks, and that's fine too. But maybe you developed a limiting belief because of that. That you just felt that because of where you come from, you could never really excel. Maybe you somehow along the way just picked up the belief that, well, maybe you just don't have any self-discipline, or you don't have any willpower, that you just can't stick to things. You're not strong enough. And again, we all have these things. Maybe somewhere along the way you picked up a belief that, you're just clumsy or klutzy, or, you're just not any good with your hands. And, there could be a valid reason for that, but just try to identify it. Try to put as much down on that list as you can. Maybe somehow you picked up the belief that nobody likes you. For whatever reason. Maybe, like I say, maybe you were bullied. Maybe you were just a shy kid. Maybe you came from a very unhealthy environment. It's very possible. It happens all the time. Maybe it was your parents that reinforced that. But again, try to identify these things. We're going to wrap it up there in about 10 seconds, guys. But okay, we'll wrap it up at that. But right now you should have a list. And again, it doesn't have to be everything, but again, hopefully you don't have too many things. If you don't have too many things on that list, fantastic, good for you. But I know from my own experience, I had a lot of baggage. When I did exercises like this, when I was first on beginning my journey, and really, reevaluating my life, I had a lot of things that I really had to take a good hard look at, and I had to challenge along the way. And I have to be of the belief that you have some things on your list as well. But the thing about it is, most of it's bullshit. And excuse the language, but it's the truth. We have to remember, when you're linking things like that up at that stage in your life, you're not that person anymore. You're not that weak little child anymore that linked these things up, that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy, or you're klutzy, or you're not smart enough, or you're not whatever. It's all bullshit. Because again, those things were basically based on your experiences at that point in time, by the environment that you were in, by the people that were around you, and it's all nonsense at this stage. But I guarantee you, you still have some things in you that you hold on to this very day. Some things that are affecting your life now based on all those years ago. And that's what he was talking about as far as re-editing your story. It's the story that you're telling yourself over and over and over again. But we have to remember, you don't give your past the power to define who you are today. Don't get caught up on things that happened years ago and still hold on to them if they're doing harm to you today. You want to always remember, you decide. You've got the power. You've got the power within you right now to make a conscious decision that that's all nonsense. That those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back, that have not been empowering you, that primarily it's just all a bunch of bullshit. You've got the power to primarily go in and reprogram yourself by challenging those limiting beliefs. Your past is just a story. That's the truth. Your past is just a story. And I like the way he put it in the TED Talk, that when you're revisiting your story, primarily what you're doing is you're not seeing it the way it really was. You're making some things more intense, and you're editing out or cutting out parts that are empowering. But whatever happened, at this stage, it's over. So they say that you can't go in, you can't change the past. I don't agree with that. You can change the past. If you change the meaning, you change the past. Primarily, what you do is you change your perspective. If you can learn to change your perspective on things, well, you're going to change your life. You're going to go down a different direction. And that's what we want to start working on. But not only in our own lives, but in the lives of the people that we're working with our clients. That's part of what your responsibility will be, working as a personal development consultant. It's up to you to help to identify with your client their limiting beliefs going back years and help them to challenge those, which is exactly what we're going to start doing now with you. What we're going to do is we're going to take another 5 minutes. And what we want to do is we want to start challenging those beliefs. Those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back. That list that you have in front of you right now. What we want to do is, we want to start using the power of questions. And I want you to start, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to set the clock again. And I want you to really take a hardcore look at that list that you have there. And what I want you to do is, I want you to challenge each one of those beliefs with the power of questions. And I'll kind of direct you through it to the best of my ability. But come up with your own questions as well. But primarily what we're trying to do is we're trying to just determine, are they true? Question them. When you, again, remember most of the things that you have linked up, you linked up many, many years ago. And the majority of them, they're not accurate. You're not that same person anymore. But if you don't go back and re-examine and challenge those beliefs, they're going to have hold of you. They're going to hold on to you and take you down a different path and totally prevent you from becoming the person that you're capable of becoming. So that's what we want to do right now. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to set another 5 minutes. And I want you to start looking at that list. But I want you to remember positive times when you can prove that really isn't the case. If whatever that limiting belief is, try to come up with some memories that you know for a fact that that isn't true, that you were good enough, you were strong enough, you were capable enough, whatever that belief is. You've had what are some of the experiences that maybe you've deleted because you don't think about them? You only kind of focus on the negative. But challenge those beliefs. I know you have some. I guarantee you, if you really look at those, you have multiple times over the years that you know that that's nonsense, that that is not a valid belief. What we're trying to do is imagine that those beliefs are a three-legged stool. We're kicking out the legs of those of that stool to knock it over, and each one of those legs is a false belief, a false belief primarily, limiting belief. You're kicking them out, but you're reinforcing with the memories, the positive memories, when you were strong, the times that you really succeeded. And there's no way you could have succeeded if what you believed was true. You've had some good times in your life, I promise you that. And some of you have had many, and I know firsthand you've had some amazing successes. But try to go ahead again, revisit those, reinforce them. Take a look at, again, that limiting belief that is holding you back in some areas of your life right now, today, and try to make a determination. Is it true? Is that belief valid, or is it nonsense? But I guarantee you, if you can really come up with some memories, and I know you have them, that you could challenge those limiting beliefs. Like the times that maybe you took that weakness and you used it to your advantage. You turned your weakness into a strength. Because maybe push came to shove, and for whatever reason, you had to stand up, you had to step up your game, you had to do something. And it might have been difficult, but you did it. But again, if you were able to do it then, if you were able to turn that weakness into a strength, well, is it true then? Is that a valid belief? No. I think we both know the answer to that. But there was times in your life that you did it, where you thought you had that limiting belief that was going to prevent you. But for whatever reason, you managed to do it anyway. And chances are, I think if you really put your mind to it, you'll probably come up with a number of times that you actually went ahead and you did succeed. But again, the more of those you can come up with, you're weakening that limited belief. That's what we're trying. We're trying to go ahead and, again, remove them. Think about the times that you just felt unstoppable. For whatever reason, you were just in a peak emotional state. And you were able to go in there, and even though you might have had this idea in your head that you weren't good enough, you weren't strong enough, you weren't capable enough, you weren't skillful enough, for whatever reason. But for some reason, you were just in a peak state and you did it. And you did it well. We all have those experiences. But again, you have to remember them. You have to reinforce them. So we're going to give about another 10 seconds here, guys. And we're going to wrap it up. But we're going to come back now to the present. So at this stage, you have your list. And on your list, primarily, you've identified a number of limiting beliefs from the beginning, from your early days, that for whatever reason, you linked up along the way, but they're not empowering you. So what we want to do now is, like I say, you've taken the time where you've started, but I want you to continue this exercise after this session. I want you to take the time. Sorry. Can you have somebody, if you don't mind, just muting the mic? Thanks. Just getting a bit of feedback there. Maybe you forgot to turn the mic off. But again, I want you to continue this exercise, and I want you to challenge those limiting beliefs, because they're not doing you any service, guys. But we all have them. Like I can tell you, for many years, many years, I used to get caught up with nonsense, always questioning my abilities, what I can do, what I can't do, based on things that I had linked up when I was a child that just weren't true. But again, they were true to me. And I can tell you, they prevented me from being the best version of myself for a very long time. What I felt that I deserved. But I got to imagine that you have some form of that in you as well. But think about now, even at this very moment, how is your past? How is your past life influencing your present? There's no question there's going to be a lot of positives there. Many of you have some really fantastic past that now have made you the person that you are right now. That's really a positive. But I think if you're being honest, there's some negatives there too. But how are those negatives from your past? How are they primarily affecting you? Are they preventing you from going for a promotion? Are they hurting you in your relationships? Are they primarily limiting your capability as far as what you could be achieving in your life? But what I want you to do is continue the exercise after this session. Spend some time. Look at those limiting beliefs that you formed, but challenge them. Question them. As he says, spoon in some of your strengths, some of the times when you were successful, when you were able to overcome. But you can't start the next chapter of your life if you keep rereading the last one. But that's what we're all guilty of. We're always living in the past, reliving it over and over again, telling the same story over and over and over again in our own minds, which are preventing. And your clients are doing that too. So what I want you to do is start to write your future. Write the next chapter, but without those limiting beliefs. What I want you to do, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to set the clock again in a minute now. But I want you to start to write the next chapter of your life minus those limiting beliefs. Imagine you've wiped them all out. And what can you do in the next chapter? What can you do in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? If you could just wipe out those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back. But I want you to go ahead and just start to write it out. What can you achieve? What would you like to achieve? If you felt nothing was preventing you from doing it. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to take another 5 minutes, and I'm going to set the clock. But start to write it out. But go ahead and make sure that you just forget those limiting beliefs. They don't exist. What could you achieve? There's a lot of things you've been holding back on. I'm certain of it. But what's been preventing you? What's been preventing you, stopping you, holding you back from going after what you really, really want? Is it those limiting beliefs from your earlier days? Or maybe it wasn't even your early. Maybe it was you could have been in your mid 20s or 30s and you had some bad experiences. Some of yous are not even at that stage yet, so maybe I'm speaking out of turn. But what experiences from your past have been holding you back that if you were just to eliminate, what could you do in the next chapter? You all have a lot of desires, because I know I talked to most of yous, if not all of yous, on one-to-ones. And I have a good idea what you guys want to achieve in different areas of your lives, and you should be able to do that with your clients as well. Similar to your purpose statement, but in more detail. What could you achieve? If you didn't care what people thought, what could you achieve? If you weren't caught up in having enough, if money wasn't an obstacle, what could you achieve? Have you been hung up on your age? Are you too young, too old? But if you can eliminate those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back, what would you and what could you achieve? So we're going to wrap it up there, guys. But I specifically left 15 minutes in this session. Because what I want you to do is I want you to continue this for the next 15 minutes on your own. I want you to go ahead and continue to write. But if you need to go back and challenge some of those limiting beliefs, go back and do that. But we're going to wrap it up now on that. You continue to work. And again, any questions, I'm going to be available. I'm going to make sure I'm available for at least the next hour. So you have any questions, any comments at all, I'll be here at my desk. Drop me a message. I'll be happy to work with you. I'll be happy to support you any way, shape, or form. But other than that, I hope you got something out of this. But it's not over now. Now it's just starting. There's a lot of work to be done in this area. And it's something that I would advise you and I would encourage you to do with your clients once you're comfortable doing it. But refer them to this session if need be. But again, those limiting beliefs from our very beginnings, from our past, are greatly, greatly affecting what we're doing today. So, other than that, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it, as always. Hopefully, you guys got something out of it. And again, any questions, comments, concerns, I'm here. Don't hesitate, reach out. Always like hearing from you. And we'll see you all again soon. All right. All the best, everyone.